lovely video club learners are here now. So if you are here and ready to reflect on learning on influence, which has been our topic of the week, please say hello in comments. It's always lovely to see and know that you are there. And then we will get started with our conversation this week about the video book Influence by Robert Cialdini. So let us know that you are here, say hello in the comments, and then we will get started.
I even listened to you today, Helen, which is very rare. I very rarely go back.
Listening to me ever is rare. Thanks for that outing that insight for everybody.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, you can share your reflections. Hello everyone. Hello Yasmin. Yasmin first in the comments. I feel like there should be like a prize for that. I haven't thought about the prize, Yasmin, but thanks for being first in the comments. Hi Elaine. Hi Phil. Hi Samantha. Look at all these lovely learners. Hey everybody, we've got like a slight delay on your comments coming through. Joining from lovely Nottingham. Oh, Laura, Sarah and I've got, well, I was about to say we've got fond memories of Nottingham. I've got fond memories of Nottingham.
I've got memories. As a city, I like the city a lot.
Listening and eating your lunch. Oh, well done you. I've not eaten yet. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to hold that thought. So we're going to move on from lunch and into learning. So this week 2 of the Video Book Club. Hope you're enjoying it, everyone. It's a complete experiment for us. we commit to these things that thousands of people get involved in on the basis that we think it could be useful. So thank you for getting involved, and thank you for being with us on week 2, continuing our learning journey this month. So our book is Influence by Robert Cialdini. And so far this week, we gave you some questions to frame your learning for the week ahead. We gave you a podcast conversation between Sarah and me with our reflections on the video book. And we have also given you a conversation with me and Robert Cialdini, where we sort of dived in a bit more deeply. So let us start. We'll just sort of recap on some of our reflections, so we're all kind of in the same place. And we would love to get some of your initial insights. So head into chat. We'll share some of ours, like what's stuck since we watched it and had our chat. And we'd love to get some initial insights from you in chat about what stuck out from you, whether you listen to the podcast or watch the video book, whatever you've had time to do. What's a thing that sort of stuck with you? So Sarah, it's been a few weeks since we watched it and had our chat. What still sticks?
So the distinction between you can influence because you are in authority, so in a position of power, which I think makes influencing easier. I think that is a kind of pragmatic reality. Or you can influence by being an authority, which I think is more available and accessible to all of us. And I think it is a good way to frame that influence is something that we can all learn, and it's a skill that we can all get better at. Because I've done jobs where the kind of purpose of those jobs was to influence, but you didn't maybe have loads of natural authority. Maybe you didn't have the biggest teams, maybe you didn't have the biggest budgets. So you had to deliver through other people, which I think are some of the hardest jobs. And I think the people who do those jobs really well, the reason they can is because they are very good at influence, because they can't directly go, oh, well, I've just got all the kind of power in quite a high control and contained way to just do this. I have to influence and deliver with other teams. I have to influence and persuade. And they do that in a really kind of positive way, not in a kind of manipulative way. So I did like this difference between in authority and an authority, and then really thinking about, well, what am I an authority in? Like, what can I bring to conversations where I am trying to influence?
I found that really empowering, that point, because I think sometimes you can feel limited by loads of things, limited by ladders, limited by levels, all that stuff. And actually the idea that I can take control of being an authority in an area that I'm interested in. Isabel agrees with you on that, so that's lovely. I would like to have a little chat about Susan's comment. Where is your comment, Susan? The best thing, the interview technique of asking why they invited you to interview. So this is the thing that has stuck with me. I've kept going around it in my head. So let's just explain it for everybody. Sarah, I would like to get your views, and then I would like to get the community's views to see, Susan, whether people are with you or whether they're somewhere else. So this was the point. In the interview that I did with Robert, I was talking about how do we put your principles into practice in the context of career development. And the first thing he talked about was like, well, when you go for a job. The very first thing you can do is influence the outcome of an interview. And he said the thing that you should do, and this is the thing that stuck with me, he said the thing that you should do is at the start of an interview, you should ask, so let's imagine this is an interview, Sarah's interviewing me, she'd love to do that. Let's imagine Sarah's interviewing me, and I say to Sarah, oh, just before we get started, I'd love to know what it was that you saw in my application that you made you choose me for interview. So basically you ask somebody what they saw in you that meant they selected you for interview, and you make that the first part of that conversation. And then you influence the outcome according to his work, because then you're keeping all the good stuff in their mind and sort of reinforcing, you know, the brilliant things that they saw in you that meant that you're sat in front of them. It's really stuck with me because I was trying to think, would I do that? Sarah, would you do that?
No. No. And so I listened to that interview with you. That was like that was his first example. And actually it's a really good example of, you know, sometimes when you disagree with something or you can't put yourself in those shoes, like I can't ever imagine going into any kind of interview and starting it by saying, so tell me, like, before I answer any of your questions, tell me why you've invited me here today. I think it just would never feel kind of natural to me. Can I see what he's trying to get to? Because what he talked about is you're getting people to say out loud your strengths, the things that you're good at, like why they wanted to talk to you in the first place. And I understand the kind of reason and rationale behind it. You know, like there's sometimes a gap though between that and then the reality. And like exactly like Elaine's saying, I just don't think I am bold enough or brave enough. I did also try to put myself in the shoes as an interviewer and think, how would I respond if someone did that kind of to me? And I think I would be okay, but it's probably not how I would want to start the conversation either. And so, yeah, I left sort of going, it wasn't something that it wasn't an idea that I could imagine taking into action.
Yeah, I agree. I've kind of, because it's obviously they've proven it. Like he's not kind of just sharing, here are some nice ideas for influence. Like you'll have seen, if you listen to the podcast or have looked at any of his work, Robert Cialdini has been doing this for years and years and years. He's like the influencer on influence, and has sold millions. There's a lot of research in what he's done. But yeah, I thought it's just stuck with me. Like, would I do it? Could I do it? When could I experiment with it? Why would I experiment with it? If I want the job but it doesn't work, then it's a funny thing to experiment with, because you're having an interview because you want a job. It's quite a high risk.
You could do though, just trying to be really open about like how else you might use it. If you were in a career conversation with your manager, if you were in a performance review, asking for strengths-based feedback, saying, oh, what have you seen me do well over the past 3 months? When have you seen me at my best? That is getting somebody to talk about what you are good at. And if you're kind of framing somebody's thinking around like your contribution and your impact, I can see how that would be useful. You know, when you're sort of trying to reflect on like the difference you're making. Maybe if you were talking about progression, I'd really like the opportunity to go and work on, you've got like a project in mind you want to be kind of nominated for, or you are going for a promotion, you know, reminding people of what you do well. I can see how that would kind of lead to influence. I can imagine doing it maybe more in that context.
I feel like as a community, the sort of consensus of what I'm looking at in the chat is that people are going, I might give it a go, but I'd do it at the end. I think that I don't think I've seen anybody who said like, yeah, I'm going to try that at the start of my meeting. So maybe a sort of a practical action that you could take is kind of building those questions in. Someone actually also mentioned about recency, but you know, you're keeping, if it's the last thing they think about is, you know, what are the brilliant things that meant that I brought you into this interview? It's probably not a bad thing for them to go away from that meeting thinking. So let us know what else has stuck, everyone. So questions and reflections about influence based on either what you heard or what you watched. Please share anything that we can share our perspective on, or perhaps the community can contribute.
Can I make one other observation that I'd love to get the group's perspective on? So one of the things that he talks about, which I can believe, is that you are much more likely to influence people if you're kind of probably in a room with them. It's kind of, I think, the way that he was describing it. He said you're 16 times more likely to get like a yes, or to kind of get the outcome that you're going for. And so I was thinking, I suppose I have experienced that in old world of work, where I was in an office every day. If I think about the most senior people that I was trying to influence, or sometimes the hard to influence people, if I could get in front of them, I stood a good chance. And I used to think really creatively about how to make that happen, because those people, you know, were so busy and they got loads on. And I really tried to think, well, oh, okay, well, there's someone who starts early, so I will come in, because that's when I can grab them for 10 minutes. And if I am enthusiastic and can put my case to them in that moment, that does seem to make a difference. Now, fast forward to how we all work today. Most of us working in a hybrid way, I would imagine. And so I don't think we can rely on seeing someone kind of in real life to always be able to influence. Now, we can talk like this, so maybe that's fine. Maybe you go, well, as long as you've got your, maybe, you know, the videos on versus videos off. Maybe if you're trying to influence, you're like, that is a video on moment, because at least you're making eye contact, you know, even though it's through a screen. But I would be really interested to know, you know, what does it mean for influence, the fact that we're kind of working in a hybrid way? And also, how do you make sure you don't miss out if you're not someone who's able to be in the office more often? You know, that point that people get worried about, am I going to miss out on progression because I can't be in the office as much as some other people, maybe because of some of my other responsibilities or my kind of life, and how that's sort of set up. And so, yeah, I think it's just an interesting point to reflect on.
I think a lot of the video book is, you kind of go, oh, that's interesting. I need to think about that a bit more. Like, I need to think about, how would I use that? How would I believe it? I like, where's Kath? I saw Kath's comment. Be more human, even online. So I guess, you know, you take the insight that people are more likely to say yes when you're in person. You take the reality of that's not always possible. So then you kind of get somewhere in the middle, which is, well, how can I be more human when I'm not together in person? So we actually have a free tool on our website called More About Me. It's quite a good team meeting tool, everybody. The website's amazingif.com. Maybe someone in our team that might be here can put it in the chat for you. But it's just a couple of questions. It's a really nice team meeting exercise. You get into, like, we always talk about, you know, the difference between the human being versus the human doing. That just means we have a conversation a bit more about the human being. A couple of other things that have stuck. See if this reminds you of any stuff, Sarah. The shopping trolley. Do you remember? You like the shopping trolley one?
I don't remember that.
Oh, so that was the shopping trolley one, was where people, there was a guy who basically, I think, created the shopping trolley. It was in the supermarket.
Oh, yes, no, I did like that.
Everyone was going around with baskets, and then they stopped spending because they could only put so much into their baskets. He wanted them to spend more, so how could they have more baskets? So he created the shopping trolley, but nobody would use it because it was too weird and innovative. And so he basically got people, I think he paid people to walk around with the shopping trolley, because you kind of lean into social proofing. So I see somebody else a bit like me doing something, therefore I'm more likely to do it. I posted about this week actually on LinkedIn, this idea of peer suasion, that we can be persuaded by what we see people like us doing, and we can also use that to persuade people at work. So I can say, well, you know, that team over there are doing that, or X, Y, and Z agree, so we should have a chat about it. So peer suasion is a good tactic for influencing.
I also think if you want to increase your influence, thinking about who can do that for you. So, you know, sometimes I think when we're trying to persuade people, it can come across as your opinion. So maybe you're talking about your customers, you're trying to represent your customers or your partners or your suppliers. And one of the kind of tactics that I always kind of used to use was, rather than me just saying, well, our customers are telling us that, and I feel like I'm repeating it sort of third person, can you actually get your customers to say the words out loud? You know, like, can you film your customers? Can you get statements that are, you know, written and come from customers kind of in a first person way? Because I think then it feels more believable. And it's not that what you're saying, you're not kind of manipulating it. What you are saying is the same, but it's sometimes how that insight is presented to us, I think, impacts then how we feel about it. You know, like the level of buy-in and believability. Like if Helen said, and she does, and I think I often do ask these questions, sometimes she might say, oh, well, I think this might be a good idea for our workshops. I might be like, okay, let's talk about that. if Helen said to me, well, I've tested this idea out in this workshop, this is what people said back, and then took a screenshot of comments of people going like,
that was how to influence Sarah.
It's not that I think I'm relatively well. We know each other too well. That's our problem. But if Helen then took screenshots of comments and then said, this is what I think, and I'm kind of backing it up with, look what everybody said in the comments, suddenly I'm even more in. I'm even more bought in than probably I was before. I think that's quite a smart thing to do as well.
It is quite a smart thing. I like this one, David. I've forgotten about this one. Oh, actually, well, I like Priyanka's as well. So Priyanka said it's basically like loss aversion, this one. So people are kind of care more about losing $1 than winning $1 is kind of what he said. So the idea that, you know, people don't want to lose stuff. So you don't want to lose your budget, or you don't want to kind of lose a meeting that you care about, or whatever it is. Loss aversion is a very powerful source of influence. I also like this one. He talks about kind of motivating teams. If you want to influence people to keep working hard, like if you're like, maybe you're like a project manager, or you've got a team that you're leading, or you're an actual manager, praise team commitment, not progress. And so, do you remember this point? Like, you listened, so you heard to say it.
Yeah, I did. I was a bit unsure about this. I was trying to. So his point was, if you just praise someone's progress, if you say, on that project, I thought you did a brilliant job, and it was brilliant because, so you give some specific strengths-based feedback like we would always encourage. His point was people sort of slow down, like they kind of give themselves a bit of a break, because they give themselves permission, because they're like, well, I've done that well. And I was then thinking, well, is that always a bad thing? Because actually, don't we need ebbs and flows so that we don't, so people don't burn out? Because actually, if you're relentlessly going, you were really committed to that project, let's go again, and maybe it is all in the delivery and in the examples. I was just like, oh, but is there no point where you then press pause and just go, that is a job really well done? I do get the point on, I've heard this in sport before, that when things do go well, you should spend way more time working out what it was that went really well, so you can do even more of it. So let's really pinpoint, it was because we did this, so let's keep doing that. That went really well. And actually, when things don't go as well, it's better to kind of move on fast, and otherwise you kind of dwell on it and ruminate too much. I think I needed more examples of kind of what that would look like, but I felt a tiny bit uncomfortable with going, I'm never going to say to somebody that's a job well done.
Which I'm not sure is what he was saying, but I get the point. I think he was kind of saying, if you're, own a project, you want to keep people's momentum up, praise the commitment. I think, what we keep coming back to, and what he came back to be fair, and he did it on the video book, he did it in the conversation, was this kind of influencing ethically. These are proven tactics, but I think, like tactics without trust, I think is a problem. So if you're just using tactics, you need to have trust in your team, I think, alongside using some of these influencing tactics, or kind of maybe the ethics of the whole thing falls down. Reciprocity. I thought, yes, we've talked about this quite a lot before, this idea of people helping people. What's your perspective on reciprocity and influence, Sarah?
I was already on board with this. So I do believe in givers gain more. I don't think you should do it because of that. I think you should give because you want to, and because you think, well, this is how I can be useful. I always really like, we once interviewed a brilliant social entrepreneur called Jack Graham on the podcast, and he said, you should never ask yourself, how do I do a job that I love? You should always ask, how can I do work where I'm most useful? And it always really, really stuck with me. And so I do think this idea of, like, you've got to give, I suppose that's how you build trust in a relationship. And I did see, I think people sometimes get caught out when they don't do this kind of in the right way. If you're being too tactical about influence, I think people do see through you quite fast, and then that kind of trust breaks down. So I think you earn trust in this way by just thinking, how can I be helpful? What have I got to give? How can I be useful? And then I think believing in that kind of karma point of like, well, this will probably be useful at some point in the future, but I'm not too worried about, well, I'm only doing this because then I'm hoping they're going to say yes to my project or my proposal. I think Kath's point about being kind of ethical, you still want to, like show up with the behaviors that make you feel proud. And I think giving is something that, like, we're all hardwired to be helpful. So why wouldn't we do this? And also don't give ourselves a hard time. If we, sometimes people are like, oh, maybe I should be more boundary, maybe I should say no more. But if you're giving, like that whole idea of giving without keeping score that Adam Grant talks about, I think in the main is a good thing, as long as we're not always progressing other people's priorities and never progressing our own.
We did a podcast on that, didn't we? How to give without getting it wrong. Yes, I think it's quite a recent podcast, but I can't remember the number. But yeah, if you feel like sometimes, like giving is going too far, or people pleading tend to mean that you're prioritizing others over your own all the time, could be a good listen. Absolutely loving the level of comments here, everybody. Yeah. Like this is what makes learning last when we talk about it together. So this is actually the moment that I'm enjoying the most in the whole video book club. Do you know what I think? I do. Yeah. I'm loving this. Like, I think because Sarah and I record these things, it's just us in a little sort of bubble of what we think useful learning might be. So having all of you here as part of the conversation is very rewarding. Anyway, just one last thing before we talk about actions, everyone. What are you actually going to do? What are you going to do with this? Because I think we haven't talked about Diane's point. Diane talks about the scarcity factor. And also, I do think it's funny, the young guy who was selling secondhand cars. So the scarcity factor is probably quite obvious. You can influence people if, there's something's running out. We've only got 2 left. We've only got, space for the 5 people to come to this meeting or this event. Like scarcity influence people into action. The secondhand car was someone who was using that strategy to sell a car because they were getting basically people to arrive at the same time who were interested in buying the car. And so people kind of had to rush to make a purchase. But it does make me think it's quite I think you'll see on some of these video books, they are dramatized with actors to bring the concepts to life. And sometimes that works quite well. And sometimes it's interesting how that is created. There are some coming up that are interested. We're going to give you, it's why a little bit in the email that you get on a Monday from us, we give you like the must watch chapter. Yeah. That's one that we think you get the concept and actually the creative really supports it. By all means, if you've got the time, dive in everywhere else. But there are, the visualization of some of the concepts are there, you'll make your own decisions about them. We're all going to make our own decisions. Actions, everyone. What are we actually going to do?
Shall I share one action that I was thinking about again this morning, listening to Helen on the podcast? So a tool that was taught to me that I continue to find really useful is an influence and impact matrix. So this is where you start by maybe writing down the 15, 20 people that you spend the most time with at work, or however many feels like kind of the right number for you. And then you kind of plot them on a matrix. And what you are most interested in is who are the high influence, high impact people for you to be able to do your job brilliantly, for you to be able to kind of deliver on your role. So who are the 3 or 4 people that are in that kind of top right-hand side of that matrix? And then it just forces you to question, am I investing in those relationships? Am I thinking about how I can be helpful? Am I really listening? We're not talking loads about listening. I think listening is a really important mechanism for influence. Every time I do this, sometimes the trap that I fall into is spending time with people I get on really well with and I enjoy spending time with, but they're not necessarily high influence, high impact, or maybe they're high impact, but they're not kind of high influence. So it's just a good way to just think a bit about the relationships that you're building, because you do have limited amounts of time. And I think there are certain people or sometimes teams that you might want to overinvest in terms of your influence, and just knowing who those are. And actually, if you said to me right now, have you got that? Do you know the top 3 to 5 people you really want to influence and kind of invest in 2025? I would be like, oh no, I need to think that through. So that's going to be my action.
I like it. I think the persuasion, we're always trying to get people learning more, learning more on LinkedIn, learning more in companies. And I think if we can kind of just, sort of leverage the community that's already learning as a way of persuading everyone else who isn't yet, then I kind of want to find more ways. I want to find more ways to do that. What else we got here? So someone said, take treats in, bit of reciprocity. Yeah. So if I give you a treat, you're going to give me a treat. So I like this, the reciprocity treat cycle. Reminding people when they've done something in the past that I'd like them to do for me now. So a little sort of tactic there. Laura adding on to the treat thing with the Blue Monday thing. So
that would be fun.
Yeah.
It's also quite playful, which is good for people.
What are blue treats? I can't think of any blue coloured treats.
Blue Smarties.
Okay. Do they sell them separately, or have I got to blue whatties?
Actually, that really shows my age. Wicked, you know, like the alcohol drink, Wicked.
I don't think you can take that in at 9 o'clock on Monday.
I was just thinking, what food is blue? Like, that's a very 90s reference.
Yeah, it's Wicked. Yeah. If anyone else has got any inspiration for blue treats, I feel like Smarties, you're going to have to like pull like Smarties and everyone out. That's a lot of effort. That's a lot of effort.
I like Caroline's point around you've got a big ask of her CEO to make. You know, almost thinking about. I often think what I got wrong with influence was going straight in with the kind of the big ask. Robert talked about, you know, small asks. So what are kind of the small asks? So you might want to have in your back pocket, if they say no to that, like, oh, there's some kind of smaller things that then they might be more likely to say yes to if they've had to say no. Or can you kind of get them to come up with the answer for themselves? I mean, that's the other way to influence. Like, if you're more in conversation, I think often I felt like I had to give an answer that I was looking for a yes, no on versus have a conversation. You know, like, are you presenting or are you conversing? And I always think if you're having a conversation, it's easier to influence than if it feels very one way. And sometimes in positions of power, you feel that pressure to maybe be like, I must present. Yes, blue ribbons. Yes,
very creative. The obvious one.
Blueberries. That's the answer. Elizabeth is the healthy person amongst us. I went blue Smarties, blueberries. That's what we should do.
You went Wicked. Let's just be clear. Yes. Also, I think Gina's taken it to the next level, adding spirulina into your treats. So if you want to bake any biscuits this weekend, add a bit of spirulina and take them to your teams. I absolutely love it. Okay, everybody, we are at about time now. So let's just talk about what's happening to end the week and then what's happening next week. So to end the week, we will send you an email tomorrow, a bit of a build on today really, with a so what now summary. So just like private reflection view. If you want to involve any of us in that, like post it on LinkedIn, we'd love to see it. It's really nice to support and celebrate it. A couple of people did that last week, and it's just really, really nice to see how people are engaging in what we're sharing and then actually kind of thinking, but what does that mean to me? So the so what summary will help you to do that. In the email, you'll also have all the links to anything that you might have missed. It's probably quite a good thing to flick on. You know, if someone is not on the video book club but wants to be, or they just want the links to the podcast and stuff, just flick that onto somebody and then they'll be able to easily access what you have been learning. Next week, we're talking about burnout. So we're going to be talking about burnout and the stress cycle. Our recommended watch from that video book is chapter 1. So just to be really clear, in the burnout video book, chapter 1 is about the stress cycle, what it is, why it matters, and why we need to complete the cycle. The rest of the chapters are a bit broader. They're about things that contribute towards stress in society. So kind of a whole host of things, but they're less directly relevant to sort of work and personal development. So up to you what you watch, but our recommendation in the context of our conversations is watch chapter 1. In addition, you'll get Sarah and Mai's conversation on the Tuesday, and Sarah also talks to one of the hosts, Amelia Nagoski, on the Wednesday. And then hopefully we'll be back with all of you on Thursday, which would be very, very exciting. Any final thoughts from you, Sarah?
If you were really interested in burnout, we did a previous episode on the podcast with Jen Moss, who does talk about burnout very much specifically around work. So if you feel like you're close to maybe experiencing that or experiencing it now, or want to support somebody in a work context, the Jen Moss episode is very targeted. In the video book, as Helen said, watch the first video and then, explore however you kind of want to. But I think it's a good topic for everybody to understand, because even if we've not experienced it, you often know somebody else who has. And so it's just really good if we can all be kind of supportive for people, because we all know in our squiggly careers, there's no such thing as a straight line to success. And everyone has those knotty moments that always feel hard.
Well, that is a lovely comment to end on. I'm just going to end it with a practical one that's less lovely. Laura, hello, Laura. The link for this, the easiest place to find it is the email that you get on a Monday has like a calendar for the week ahead, and the link for this is in there. If you ever can't find it, just message us a little bit before, and we can share it. But it is in that calendar that comes out on the Monday email. Right, everybody, we will leave you for your day. Thank you as ever for learning with us, and we look forward to speaking to you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really enjoying these conversations. Bye, everyone.
Bye.